All right, this is Mike from Mysterious Outpost Radio. I have a new YouTube channel, which is Mysterious Outpost Radio. Please go subscribe. I will give links in the description below. And also subscribe to my main channel, Mysterious Rabbit TV. And today on the show, we're going to have none other, L.A. Marzulli. How the heck are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So, of course, I'm very familiar with your Watcher series. We have discussed that before, it's been a while though. Not a video interview, it's just a regular podcast. But I want to go back, I guess before we get into it, explain the difference between the fallen angels and the Nephilim.
Well, I mean, different people have a different take on this. I hold to what my mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, and others like Chuck Missler and Gary Stearman, Chuck Smith, G.H. Pember. So, I mean, I'm not just waving my arms here. I've read their material and formed my opinion. In my opinion, the Nephilim are the progeny of the fallen angels and the women of earth. It says the sons of God saw the daughters of men, chose wives from whoever, and went into them, married them, chose wives, married them. And the offspring were of a Nephilim. And Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of men and had children by them. So it says it twice. And actually, the second time in the Genesis 6 passage is even more specific, and also afterwards, the idea that when the sons of God saw the daughters of men and had children by them, the children of the fallen angels and the women of earth are the Nephilim, in my opinion.
So what exactly does it mean when it's talking about let us make man in our image and after our likeness?
That's an extremely complex discussion. And, you can spend hours.
A brief synopsis.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend hours mulling over that. As a Christian, I believe in the Godhead, which is a mystery in itself. You've got the Father, you've got Jesus, who is the Messiah, and the Son, and you've got the Spirit of the living God. These three are one. How does that work? And we don't really know. And it's very difficult to comprehend it with a finite mind to begin with. But we are the replacements for the fallen angels, in my opinion. In other words, there's a rebellion that happens, I believe, in the far distant past. Aeons ago, right? Mm-hmm. In the far distant past, where there was this rebellion and Lucifer fell with basically a third of the angels. We are, in my opinion, the replacements for the fallen angels. And he never does anything twice. Why not make more angels? No, he doesn't have to do that. He's going to make something new and different, which is what we are. But we are made in the image and likeness of him. And I mean, you just go figure. When you look at the complexity of a human being, you have to ask me this question, didn't you? When you look at the complexity of a human being, when you look at the face and all the myriad of muscles and facial construction, when you look at what's in here, this is a control module right here, right? So you've got eyes, you've got all these senses. When you look at the fact that our taste buds are so evolved, we like this, we don't like that, smells, hearing, sight, all plugging into this computer, but that's not where we sit. It's not where our consciousness sits. We use the brain as a tool, just like we use all these senses that we have. So when the Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, I mean, that's sort of an understatement. I mean, I am just in awe at the way this little thing works that I find myself living in. And I've been saying this at conferences, and I'll say it at the Prophecy Watchers Conference coming up on the 13th of the month. And I'll be speaking on Friday night in the big room on the 100th year anniversary of October 13th, the Fatima apparitions, which we just finished a new film, but I digress. But I've been saying this to conferences and people all over the United States. If we are intellectually honest, we have no idea of where we are and how we got here. Nobody knows if the universe is analogous to the United States. Is planet Earth in Topeka, Las Vegas, with the, I don't want to be there right now.
Yeah.
New York City or Los Angeles? No one knows. Nobody knows what this is or where we really are in it. And so we're all in this like matrix. We We are raised up in this thing, and oh yeah, this is reality. Not so fast, citizen. It's not reality. It's the reality that we perceive, but there's a reality which completely supersedes this. So it's a very complex question, and one that I, am constantly plumbing the depths of, as it were.
And I think you explained it very nicely, LA. But one thing I do agree on, we did not come from a freaking puddle of mud. There's no way. Because just like you said, this is a complex computer, and they're still trying to it took them, I think they're finally getting to grasp with having computers to process to the quickness of the human mind, and they're still struggling with that. But I'm digressing, but that's a dangerous subject to kind of get into whenever we are trying to figure out computers or AI to actually think like a human or to process information like a human. But I may save that for a later show, though. But anyways, with the Nephilim and the fallen angels, do you think it's possible that their bloodlines are here on Earth today, and possibly that the Antichrist or Antichrist figure is possibly part of that bloodline?
Well, the Antichrist figure will be the seed of a serpent. He will be the son of perdition. He will be, in my opinion, literally, Satan will impregnate a woman in the same way that Mary, in a similar way, not the same, in a similar way that Mary was overshadowed by the Spirit. Somehow, the fallen cherub will pass his genetic information into this man of sin, the son of perdition. Don't ask me how that works. In my opinion, and a lot of people get into the whole Rh negative blood thing. And I just haven't had time to do it, but I'm going to explore that. And I know enough about it to get me in a lot of trouble. But I have asked a hematologist about what's the deal with the Rh negative. And the woman said, well, it's rare, but it's human in all aspects. I mean, it's completely human as we know it. So it'd be interesting to get some DNA on that and find out, what if there really is any difference. We get into this whole deal with Nephilim, and can the hybrids procreate? In other words, when you've got a fallen angel and a woman, and they procreate somehow, genetic information is passed down, and the offspring is the Nephilim. Are the Nephilim like a mule? Do they have the ability to procreate, or are they sterile? And see, we don't know that. We don't have all the particulars. So we're really we're groping for answers, and that's why we're on the trail with all the elongated skulls from Paracas, for instance. We've got DNA cooking at 2 different labs. The results should be, maybe by the end of October. And if it goes where I think it's going to go, we will hold a formal press conference in Dallas because it needs to be blasted out. And people, instead of writing hit pieces on us and telling us that without, I love these people who write these hit pieces. They have no idea of what we did, where the evidence is, how it was procured. I mean, it took us 4 years to get permission from the Minister of Culture to go down and get the samples. And we did that, and under very, very strict guidelines set by the labs, the DNA labs. So all that stuff is cooking at 2 different labs, and we should have results, like I said, in October.
I don't mean to interrupt you, LA, but you think it's possible that the powers that shouldn't be will possibly try to prevent y'all if there is some type of I guess evidence that proves that of what you're talking about?
Well, there already is. I mean, we already went out with the preliminary evidence over a year ago, and we were blasted by the one woman who was a geneticist and never called us, never figured it, never asked us about the protocols which we followed, never discussed any of her findings with the labs. Just it's all contaminated. How could she make a statement like that? How could she possibly know whether anything was contaminated? She doesn't know.
She's just trying to discredit y'all.
Right. She doesn't like the results because it doesn't form her paradigm. So that's why she writes the hit piece. Well, our archaeologist wrote a rebuttal to her hit piece, and we published that, and that will also be in the new book, which will be coming out roughly at the same time. I'm taking On the Trail of a Nephilim Volume 1, Volume 2, and also other research and putting it all together along with the current DNA, because people, it's one of our best-selling books, and people love that because we're on the trail. Unlike, sitting in and going through all these ancient tomes and archives, which is important too. I'm not dissing that research, but there's nothing like getting out in the field and, getting new research, and that's what we're doing. It's cutting edge stuff. No one, despite what you might read on the net, no one has done any DNA evidence on the Paracas skulls. The History Channel took what we call the cinnamon skull and did some DNA testing on that, but they fudged the evidence. And I actually did a YouTube video on my YouTube channel, L.A. Marzulli, about that, the way the History Channel just fudged the evidence. I mean, what are you guys doing?
They're known for that, too.
We won't do that. We will. I promise you, we will not do that. We will present exactly what we find. We will present the truth, and the documents will be open to public scrutiny.
And I don't mean to kind of digress what I'm about to say, but what keeps you motivated, L.A.? What keeps you fighting the good fight? Because it seems like your ambition, your positive nature, to keep fighting for the truth. What is driving you?
Well, what drives me is a love for Jesus. I mean, that's the deal, and knowing that what we are doing in some ways points back to the validity of the biblical prophetic narrative. I mean, that's the overarching idea here. The overarching mindset is that we believe that 3,500 years ago, when Joshua and Caleb went into the Levant, the promised land, and prosecuted the war against those tribes are all Nephilim tribes. And the mandate from a loving, holy God, wipe them all out, including the animals. And unless we understand that what is happening there is a cosmic chess match, which I wrote about, is genetic manipulation in the animal kingdom, which is an abomination, and genetic manipulation in the human kingdom, humankind, which again is an abomination, which is why the mandate goes out to wipe everything out there. And now, once you plug that in, all of a sudden it becomes, oh my gosh, I get it. Without the Nephilim there, it's like, huh? So we believe that 3,500 years ago, the Nephilim fled the area. And some went northward into Europe. Others went, built papyrus boats and went across the Atlantic. And, Thor Heyerdahl proved this. And I'll be presenting this portion of it in Dallas, that Thor Heyerdahl proved you could build a papyrus boat, put a sail on that deal, sail out the Straits of Gibraltar, and the trade winds, without knowing where you're going, the trade winds will carry you to Barbados, which is the New World. So we have tales of giants from all the First Nation people, all the Native Americans who are here, pretty much, all over the United States. They're there. 9, 10, 12 footers with red hair. Heck, on Catalina Island, and we showed that on the Trail of a Nephilim 2, I found the photograph of Ralph Glidden, 1919, and in front of him is basically a 9-footer. We found skeletons with 6 fingers, which isn't supposed to be there, elongated skulls. Are you kidding me? Right out here on Catalina from not even 100 years ago, Ralph Glidden. And all that's kept under the record, under the radar. All that is obfuscated. The American people don't know what was here beforehand because it points back to the validity of the biblical prophetic narrative, and the biblical prophetic narrative goes against the Darwinian paradigm. That is what's at stake.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. And to me, it seems like I'm not really a pessimist person by no means, but I like to, kind of examine every possible angle. And one thing that, especially when you start spitting out truth, I feel like you put a target on your head.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you had any type of death threats towards you?
Yeah, we were met by a spook in March from an alphabet agency, and this was his opening statement to me. LA, what kind of phone do you have? And I go, I have an iPhone. And he goes, is it encrypted? I go, no. He goes, well, they can come and get you, and then they can find kiddie porn on your iPhone. Oh, really? Isn't that interesting? And what's interesting is that's what you see happening on the news. Some guys arrested with kiddie porn, and it's the trial, not by jury, the trial of public opinion. We don't know how that got onto that phone. I was threatened that way. That's the first thing. That's why I tell the story over and over again, because it's all out there. Okay. And you're welcome to come right now and look at my iPhone. Nonsense. So that's the first thing. The second thing he said is, what kind of car do you drive? And I drive a 26-year-old automobile, which I restored, and I love it. And he goes, does it have a computer? And I go, yeah, it's got a primitive computer. He says, you might want to get that checked out. So I was driving the car, and I was coming around a turn and up here in the Santa Monica Mountains. And that turn is the left-hand turn with like a 1,000-foot drop, no guardrail. Now, it's not straight down. It's like, but you go over there, see you later. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, I hear pop, and I'm doing 55 miles an hour, which is the speed limit. All of a sudden, I hear a pop, and I lose control of the car. The car will not steer because the main fan belt, the serpentine belt, which runs all the power steering and everything else, is broken. Now, I've been driving for 50 years, literally. Never had anything like that happen. And when the tow truck driver picked me up, because I had to go like this, I steered the car, manhandled the car, steered the car away, and then, my heart's beating. If my wife was in the car, that would have been it. If she was driving, that would have been it. She wouldn't know how to react to that. Mm-hmm. So he looked at the belt, and his first words were, do you have any enemies? Because the belt looked like it was cut in 3 different places. That's what it looks like. Somebody took a razor blade in one slice, moved over 1/2 inch in one slice, moved over another 1/2 inch in one slice. That's what it looked like. Can I prove that? No, I can't. But I find it very interesting. So, those were threats that were given to us in last March. This guy also told us that the next war was going to be in North Korea. He told us that. So, yeah, we've had stuff like that. And the reason for it was our work on the Kandahar giant. That was the thing that put us on the radar. When we started talking about the giant of Kandahar, that got the powers that be interested. They don't want the people to know that there's 12-footers running around.
What are they afraid of, though, LA? What is their why are they afraid for this information to get out?
Control because and more control.
Well, I'm sure the Smithsonian is already controlling most of it anyways. But why do they want to keep you and others out there, and because of course it's got to be just more than control. It seems like they are fearing something, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's control is the number one factor, because if the masses get wind that there's a supernatural dynamic that's manifesting on the planet, whoa, then we move away from a Darwinian paradigm.
People's paradigm shifts.
So that's where I think it eventually goes.
Yeah. And back to the Nephilim, you have talked before about the black-eyed children. Does that have any connection at all?
We think, when I say we, David Weatherly and myself, we interviewed David for Watchers 5, Let Me In, which was about the black-eyed kids. And what was interesting about that interview, when David and I sat down, and I talked to him before, but I'd never met him. And I said, David, both of us agree that these black-eyed kids are not kids. They're far older. They're stunted. So they look like children, but they could be 50, 60, 100. We don't know how old they are. And they're definitely interdimensional, and they're in a fixed state. They're in a fixed state. They are evil. They are highly malevolent entities. End of story. So that's what we think that they are. We think that they're hybrids of some sort. Exactly.
Now, over the past few months, kind of skip forward a little bit. Over the past few months, and really the past year since last year, there's been a lot of talk about Antarctica. What the heck is going on down there? Is there possibly Nephilim and fallen angels down there, or maybe possibly fallen angel advanced technology that the elite or cabal want to try to confiscate? What's going on?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and one that really no one has the answer to. It's all speculation. What I do know is that during World War II, the Nazis were obsessed with Antarctica, specifically New Schwabenland. We also know that U-boats went missing at the end of World War II. In my opinion, Adolf Hitler did not die in the Fuhrer bunker. He escaped first to, and they did a thing hunting Hitler last year on the History Channel, which I found fascinating. They flew into Spain, from there out to Portugal, where he picked up a U-boat and headed to parts unknown, basically Argentina, where he lived. Martin Bormann certainly was in Argentina, Chile, and from there it's a short, especially from Argentina, it's a very short hop over to Antarctica. There are stories like you can't go to Antarctica. That's nonsense. You can go to Antarctica. Granted, you don't go in the wintertime, you go in the summer, but there are planes. It's costly, but you can fly into Antarctica, and there are expeditions there. What's interesting is the Piri Reis map, which you may or may not know about.
Yeah.
Whether it's a forgery or not, no one knows. But this map seems to be the real deal, and it shows Antarctica without the ice. And according to some research, and again, it's all urban legend, scientists look at the Piri Reis map, and now because they can figure out with the technology that they have, the actual Piri Reis map coincides with where the ice sheet is. So it's like, could that be true? Anything's possible. The fact that it's there, that the Earth probably shifted on its axis, that it was not always under ice, Antarctica. Who knows what we're looking at? Who knows what we're looking at? There were some interesting people that went down there. The head of the Eastern Orthodox Church, for one. I know Al Gore. Other people went down there. But, people do things. So it's like, look, as a researcher, as a journalist, as the author of 12 books, and 14 films, one thing I've learned: you can't do anything unless you got two sources. You can't go with the story unless you want to say, well, this is all hearsay, do with it what you will. And you can do that. I'm going with this. I think it's hearsay. I can't vet it one way or the other. You be the judge. But you've got to have a caveat like that. So that's why, like with the whole Antarctica thing, I'm very, light touch. Let's see what manifests. Let's see what develops. And,
a lot of people say that, of course, I may be asking you to speculate some, that Atlantis, Antarctica was Atlantis. But I've also heard a new type of theory not too long ago about the original, or the story of Garden Eden was actually down there as well. And that's why a lot of the big interest of Antarctica is really been going on.
And again, it's all speculation. I mean, I can't possibly weigh in on it because there's just not enough information. New Schwabenland is something that we know existed. The Nazis were obsessed with Antarctica. And we know that there were U-boats down there. We know that we've got bases down there. On the other hand, Antarctica is extremely harsh. I mean, if you're down there, and even in the midsummer, the warmest day of the year there, I mean, you can get sudden snowstorms. It's wacky. It's a wacky place to be. So, all this is, it's the stuff of legend. And so we wait and we see more information, and that's all you can do.
And I want to move forward a little bit to the harbingers of deception, because we got about 20 to 30 more minutes. Now, for the ones that are unfamiliar with the harbingers of deception, before we get into it, just give me a brief synopsis, a little rundown of the harbingers of deception.
I presume you're talking about the new film, Fatima?
Yes.
Yeah, the new film is called Fatima, Miracle of a Sun, or A Harbinger of Deception. An event happened in Fatima, Portugal, 100 years this October 13th, exactly. We visited Fatima. We spent 2 weeks in Portugal. We talked with experts, people who have looked at this event and studied it for literally decades. And we came away stunned at what we discovered. Stunned. And it's all in the new film, Fatima, Miracle of the Sun, or A Harbinger of Deception. The backstory is this: 100 years ago, in May of that year, 1917, three children, Lucia, who was 10, Francisco, who was 9, and Jacinta, who was 7, saw an apparition that was about 4 feet high. The apparition was bright, brighter than the sun. The apparition communicated with them telepathically. The apparition gave the children something to eat and something to drink. Lucia and Jacinta had something to drink, Francisco only to eat. Lucia and Jacinta could hear the apparition, voice to skull telepathy. Francisco could see her, but could not hear her. And the children went back and told their parents, who immediately, said, you kids are lying. And this is 1917, Portugal. There are no telephones, no televisions, nothing like that. There are no airplanes in Portugal. Maybe 1 or 2 in Lisbon, maybe. Most people have never seen an aerial anything. A dirigible plane didn't exist. No one's seen this. So, and the people are illiterate. Lucia and her cousins, Francisco and Jacinta, are illiterate. They can't read or write. So all they know is the stories that they're being told. The apparition tells the children to come every 13th of the month. The children do. And pretty soon crowds begin to swell. It begets a great controversy. The local priest, Father Fiera, is convinced that it's demonic. Convinced that it's demonic. Others aren't so sure. No one knows what this is. So what happens is the magistrate and the mayors and the higher ups, the government officials and the priests say, go back to the entity and ask the entity for a sign. So the children do in September. And the entity tells them on October 13th, a month from now, there will be a sign. By this time in September, the crowds have already swollen. 20, 30,000 people are showing up on the 13th of the month. On October 13th, 1917, 70,000 people are in that field. It's been raining all night. People are drenched to the bone. There's a sea of umbrellas, and we actually use pictures from 1917, black and white photos. There's 3 photographers in the field, between 2 and 3 photographers in the field. These are the old wooden box cameras with the glass plates. They're taking pictures of the before and after and everything else. 12 o'clock comes and goes. The apparition, the sign is late, an hour late. Finally, at 1 o'clock, the clouds part. The sun is there. Still nothing happens. Then another cloud moves in front of the sun, and out of that cloud comes an object which begins to spin like this and then fall like a leaf down and then spin back up and go back in the cloud. It does this 3 different times. And then at one point it comes like this over the crowd's heads, about 100 feet over the head. Eyewitnesses who are there state that what they saw was a dull silver object. There are no words in the lexicon for UFO, flying saucer. Those words won't come till decades later. The eyewitnesses, the 3 children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, and everybody else who's there, and this is something that we got to get our heads around. The reporter who published an article called it the miracle of the sun. He named it that, but it wasn't the sun. The sun did not leave its place in our solar system. If the sun is the size of a watermelon and the earth is the size of the head of a match, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it wasn't the sun. But these people, for the most part, are illiterate, which is why we go back to the 1917 records and we go to the lawyer and the doctor and the people who know, and they're saying, they're freaked out too. I looked up and saw a shiny silver object, a dull silver disc, a metallic object. It whirled, it spun. And there's other phenomena, which we're going to get into. I'm actually in the process of editing in Fatima 2, where the clothes dried. Automobile windshields just burst. Cars, the hoods popped open, engines just spontaneously combusted. People were terrified of what was going on. All this is in the 1917 handwritten records by the magistrate and Father Fiera. It's all there. But what happens is, and 6 years later, remember, Lucia's 10. Now she's 16. The Jesuits come, they take Lucia, she's hustled off to a nunnery. She's given a vow of silence. She's not allowed to talk to anybody. Just saying, this is all, I'm not making this up. And then in 1928, 11 years after the 1917 miracle of the sun, then Lucia writes consecration to Russia. Nonsense. She never, ever mentions Russia, ever, in 1917, nor does anyone else. So there are two Fatimas. The Fatima that happens after 1917, which in my humble opinion is a confabulation to spin it, and the real events that happened in that field in 1917. And it was not the sun that came over the crowd. It was not the sun that left its place in the solar system. It was something else. And when this object came down, it spun like this, and all the colors changed. There were these fibers that came down over the crowd. And all of this has been dressed up in like religious clothes when it shouldn't be. People should be looking at what this is, going back to the 19th, which is what the whole purpose of the film is. It's not to disparage anyone's belief system. People who are listening to us now, you can believe whatever you want to. I don't care. But if you're interested in what happened there, you've got to do some research. You just can't be dogmatic and go, well, I believe it was this because that's what I've been told. Do the homework. It's just like the Shroud of Turin. Some people go, oh, it's just a ridiculous artifact, LA. It has nothing to do with the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. I say, have you ever actually gone to shroud.com and spent a half an hour looking at the preponderance of evidence that it actually is the burial cloth of Jesus? That the image that's on the shroud is defies the scientific community even today. That the carbon-14 testing that was done on it has been proven to be deliberately skewed. We know that because there were end-to-end splices done by the poor Sisters of Clare in the 15th century. All that's been proven. So we know that it's not a forgery, and it's not a medieval forgery. In my opinion, I call it the calling card of God. So I'm not an anti-supernaturalist at all. I'm totally into it. I believe in the shroud, but I don't believe in the Fatima apparitions. I do not believe it was the Mary of the Bible. And I think that the problem with this is 70,000 people who are in that field had their paradigms rocked. And no one, when this thing happened, no one rebuked first and asked questions later. Everybody's going, wow, what's that? And when the thing flies over, the thing flew over less than 100 feet above the ground. Remember, people had never seen anything in the air before. Are you kidding me? They don't even know how to process this. There's nothing in their paradigm. So that's why we hear dull silver disc. Is it a harbinger of deception? In my humble opinion, without trying to disparage in anyone's belief system, yes, it's a harbinger of deception. And the reason for this is it shows that when the supernatural manifests, everything changes. People don't know how to adjust their paradigm. And unless you have a solid biblical worldview, you will be deceived. Jesus tells us that men think from fear from what is coming upon the earth. What can that be? It could be Planet X, as some people think. It could be asteroids. It could be a mile-wide mothership, which is the game changer.
So, to me, it sounds like, of course, some type of UFO. But it seems like it was bringing about fear amongst the people. So
terrified.
So what's your thoughts on UFOs? I don't know if we can classify them all together, but are they evil in origin?
In my opinion, that the whole UFO phenomena that we see is highly malevolent. These are messengers of deception, as Jacques Vallée would say. And we tried to get Jacques Vallée, because he's weighed in on Fatima before. We tried to get him, and he never even replied to the email. So I know he's busy. He probably has millions of emails, and maybe he just didn't want to do it. I respect him. I love his work. He's a great guy. I wish he would have consented to come on the film. And I would love to get him on Fatima too. In fact, what I may do is send him a free copy and see if he replies that way. But look, in my opinion, these entities, just look at the track record. People are abducted against their will. Horrific, sadistic medical experiments, often very sexual in nature, these people are subjected to that. 5-year-old boys and girls are abducted against their parents' will, against their will. People are mutilated. Cows are mutilated. The blood is drained. And this cat and mouse game has been going on for decades. For decades. They're being held back. They're being restrained by a superior force, in my opinion, which is why they don't show themselves.
And it seems like the elite are trying to gather all this, either crashed UFOs or any type of, they try to keep this under the table, out of the public eye. And if people that do come forward try to whistleblow, or anybody, they try to label them as a lunatic, a nut job, a conspiracy theorist. But I believe that these elite are using put it on. Are you?
Which is why I wear my tin hat proudly. Thank you.
I need to get me one, LA. But I really
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyone who has a contrary opinion of what the mainstream media tells us how we should think, groupthink, is immediately labeled a conspiracy theorist, or one of those tin hat type people. But they've never done a modicum of how is it that I can write about the Shroud of Turin and somehow that's okay? That's a supernatural event. But I look at Fatima, or I look at UFOs, and somehow I'm a conspiracy theorist, or I'm part of a tinfoil hat brigade. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I do these. We were at Steve Quayle's conference, which, by the way, was incredible. And Steve really, I'm sucking on a lozenge here. Steve hit it out of the park. 3,000 people in that venue, and I'm on the stage, and I go, okay, how many of you in the audience, lights in the sky, have seen lights in the sky, a UFO, orbs, sleep paralysis, had an encounter with a beam? I got to tell you, 80% of the people, I've never seen the hands go up. 80% of the people in that venue had their hands raised. And I said, keep them up. And I looked at the camera and I said, pastors, you need to deal with this, because there's people in your congregation that have had an experience and they're afraid to tell you about it. Why? Because they know they're going to be ridiculed. They'll point to the tinfoil hat. When I got off that stage, okay, there was a half an hour before the next speaker. Went back to my table. We had a line of people that wanted prayer that went on for 2.5 hours nonstop. And some of the stories they had never told another person before. I'm the first person they're telling to.
How does that make you feel?
How did it make me think? What did it make me think? It made me think that people are afraid to say anything because they'll be called nut jobs. And meanwhile, one woman had held this since she was 8 years old. 8 years old. She never told anybody. And she said LA, and she's like weeping. And she's going, I was taken 2 nights in a row. They put a needle in my belly button. Have you ever heard that? I said, of course I have. What they do with that is they're collecting the ovum. That's what they're doing. They're getting your eggs. So you tell that to a person who hasn't done any of the research. Oh, that's preposterous, LA. And I prayed with her, and something left her. Something left her. The 2 guys that came up afterwards said, wow, what was that about, LA? Something came out of her like we couldn't even believe. The hair stood up on my arms. Both of them said that. So, look, all this stuff is real. We live in a supernatural universe. And the fact is that people are so asleep that they think this is reality. And it's not. We're moving through it. But we're supernatural beings. This thing is a shell, and I'm trying to keep this shell as physically fit and mentally awake as I possibly can, because I'll be 67 in December. 13 years, I'm 80 years old. Think about that.
Well, at your pace right now, it looks like you're going to be okay.
In 13 years, how old will you be? So you're not
43.
Okay. So you're not thinking like I'm thinking. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not, I'm going like, I got, 80 years old. I mean, Chuck Missler's like now 83. Gary Stearman will be 80 next year. And both of these men are mentors to me. But the thing is moving like this, and it moves really, really quick. So I want to be as fit as I possibly can to do what I'm doing, what he's called me to do. Because it takes decades to build a man of God. And not that I'm, St. LA, he's arrived. That's not, I'm under construction. This morning on my run, I got hit last night with really heavy, intense demonic dreams. So I'm on my 6-mile run this morning, boasting here. And I said, what's going on, Lord? Why is this happening? And at the very end of the run, the Lord said, you have a root of bitterness. You're bitter against someone. Can't go there. That's your open door. Now, someone else may be able to hold on to that root of bitterness for a while. Not here. Because of what I do, I have a very short leash, and the accounts are very short. I immediately, and I repented about this like 3 weeks ago, and here it is back again. I pick it back up like a dog returning to its vomit. I picked it back up. I think I'm gonna slurp on this for a while. This is really good vomit. How's that taste? That's what it is, poison to the spirit, and it opens up the gateways and the portals, and that's why I got hit. And I just went, Father, just take it, be my shield, man. Just take it. And it's like when the Bible tells us to pray for those who spitefully use us. There's Jesus on the cross. And he goes, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Are you kidding me? Are you? That's our model right there. That's our model. When in doubt, look at Jesus. When in doubt. But that clears things up.
But let's go back to that woman that she talked to you at the conference with her abduction. Now, that's kind of what I was leading up to before you mentioned that, is that they want to label everybody as nut jobs, tinfoil hat wearers, we're lunatics. But at the same time, I believe that if these abductions are true, I believe it's some rogue government, some alphabet agency that is under black budget money. And the thing is, it's our own doing. I don't think it's beyond the earth, extraterrestrial abduction. I don't think so. Not to this point, I don't think so. So they're labeling us as conspiracy theorists, but at the same time, they are conducting these type of experiments, possibly even with UFOs. Who knows? We'll get into that just a second before we end the conversation with the Great Deception. But why are they doing this, and why are they conducting these abductions? Because it seems like they are trying to lead up to something. It's hard to put into words, but you feel something with all these stories of UFOs, abductions, and if it's true that it is our own government or some rogue group out there with a lot of black budget money, it seems like they are leading up to something. And my thing is, I just can't wrap my head around that. But the only thing I can see is maybe some type of great deception that you do talk about.
Well, first of all, is the government involved? Many of us believe that there was a quid pro quo in the Eisenhower years when these entities, which are not extraterrestrial, they are interdimensional. These entities are interdimensional, and they came here and they gave us technology for trading for access to the population. Now, you can say what you want, but in Watchers 7 and 8, we interviewed this guy by the name of Bill. And we also interviewed Bill Salas. Both of these guys were taken out the windows. Bill, the little 5-year-old, went up through the ceiling in his roof. You can't do that. Bill Salas, Robert Salas, not the Bill Salas, the author. Robert Salas went out the window. And when he's floating, levitating above the bed, he's going, what's going on here? How's this possible? And he goes to the window and he goes, are they going to open the window? That's what he's thinking, not realizing that everybody, whoever's been abducted, thinks exactly the same thing. And guess what? They don't open the window. You go through the window. You can't do that. That's beyond our physics. It's beyond our physics. So it's not either or, it's both and. It's the government, a section of the government is in league with these entities, in my opinion. That's speculation. I've thought
of that as well. I've thought of that as well.
I've had too many insiders. In the Watchmen Chronicles, we interviewed 2 guys who were at underground bases, and they saw U.S. military working side by side the little grays. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? What do you do with that? And then you got Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, the Spielberg film. The government's controlling this whole thing, And there it is. They got all their people ready to go on the ship and bum ba bum ba. Wrong music, but you get what I mean. I mean that's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. And the purpose of it is to create a hybrid entity. That's the purpose, to create a hybrid. And that's what they're trying to do. And we've seen, I haven't, but people have reported to us, that's in the film, in their own words, The Watchmen Chronicles, UFOs Are Real, which came out, this year. We released it. And Al had an encounter with a hybrid entity that looked and passed as human.
Now, and I that's something that I have contemplated also, and I believe they are trying to do that. And if that is true, LA, I think it's possible that they want us to be more fit to merge with the machines, with AI, sort of like the Matrix, because we can withstand more elements. We can withstand more computing power. We can just be more machine-like. Well, what do you think about that?
Well, I think, again, it's not either or, it's both and. There's a certain element with the whole AI thing that comes into play. But the hybrid beings are excuse me, Jesus warns us it'll be like the days of Noah when I return. Like the days of Noah. So you got to go back and look at the days of Noah and what differentiates the days of Noah. There's a lot of factors, but one of the main factors are the fallen angels are cohabiting with the daughters of men, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. So you got to ask yourself, is that happening now? And in my opinion, the big answer to that is yeah, of course it's happening now. We've got too many witnesses who have seen the hybrids. And these are modern day Nephilim, but they can pass as human. The black-eyed kids can't pass as human. That's why they're earlier versions of this thing. But all these entities are soulless, in my opinion. That's speculation. They're soulless, and they're in a fixed state. No salvation. They don't want to be saved. They're in a fixed state. So that's what I think is going on.
Yeah, I also believe that, and let's say that either goes both ways, that with the black-eyed children, it could possibly be part of this hybridization that's taken place, or possibly the bloodline of the Nephilim or fallen angels that, or could possibly be both intertwined, and they're trying to create this advanced being that is their slave force, workforce.
Well, and here's the deal. It's a very complex scenario. It's a very, very complex scenario. And nobody, including myself, has all the answers. We don't. And this thing is so, let me put it to you this way. When was the last time a news crew got to go aboard a UFO and take photographs? It's not happening.
Said no one ever.
Yeah. Now, Bob Lazar, and he's gone underground now, but he never changed his stories in decades. And I believe him. He was there at Area 51 and he saw UFOs. The guy that comes on the record for us was taken to an underground base. He saw UFOs. Another whistleblower that's in the film, in their own words, The Watchmen Chronicles, UFOs Are Real. He stated that a man basically stated that he was working side by side extraterrestrials in an underground base. So what are we to do with this? And these are not extraterrestrials. They are, in my opinion, interdimensional entities. And this is where it gets really complex. It's a very complex scenario, very complex set of facts.
In LA, to kind of round things up for this time, we have about 5 to 10 minutes left. I would like for you to talk briefly about the Great Deception. But before you do, has, over the years, because you've been talking about it for a while, has anything changed? Has anything tweaked? Have you learned something new with the Great Deception that has led you down a different rabbit hole?
No, I just believe that it's imminent. I think that the New Agers are talking about it. The guys on Ancient Aliens discuss it every Friday night. Alien Con, which I was invited last year, but the conference didn't happen. So now it's happening. And of course, they don't invite me this year. They don't want my paradigm. They aren't interested in hearing an alternative viewpoint. It's all ET. It's all ET. It's always from, Zeta Reticuli. These beings are friendly. They're going to do a bunch of things when they show up. The first thing is they're going to give us the energy that pilots the craft. Wow, that's huge. The second thing is they're going to give us a DNA upgrade. They will say that they are our progenitors, that they were our creators. So they give us a DNA upgrade in the form of a little chip that goes under the hand or in the forehead, never see it, and it changes the DNA, which ties into the biblical prophetic narrative, which I've written about and talked about ad nauseum. But no one wants to hear that, at least on the other side. But they're waiting disclosure. Guys like Stephen Greer believe disclosure was imminent. When you look at the Ancient Aliens series every Friday night, they believe we were visited in the past by ancient astronauts. I'm going, no, they're not from Zeta Reticuli. They're interdimensional. We both travel down this road like this, parallel. But when we get to who's doing it, we make opposite ends. They believe it's extraterrestrial. I believe it's the fallen angels. So when you go to Peru and you go to Sacsayhuaman and you look at these huge megalithic walls, or you go to Baalbek in Lebanon and a huge megalithic, largest stone ever cut by human hands, I believe truly that all of this is Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology, all of it.
Now, with the last couple minutes left, because some of my listeners and subscribers on YouTube may be unfamiliar with the Great Deception. Like, what is the Great Deception and when will this take place? I may be asking you to speculate just a little bit, but just enlighten my audience a little bit.
I think we're close. I think it could happen basically at any time. When it happens, they will say, ET, when they come in the ships and they'll show the ships, the governments of the world will unite and say, we've known about them, now it's their time for revealing. It could happen after some sort of a nuclear incident. It could happen right after the rapture of the church, which is a very small amount of people. It's not billions, it's in the millions. And so we won't be missed. We won't be missed. They will say that we created all life on this planet. We genetically manipulated early man. We started the world's religions and the world's earliest civilizations. Now at this critical juncture, we are back to usher mankind into a time of peace, prosperity, and knowledge, a golden age. That's the lie. That's the coming great deception. And I firmly believe we are on the cusp of it.
Well, L.A., I really appreciate your time this time around.
Thank you.
And I got to have you come on in the near future. We can discuss some really cool stuff also, because there's so many different avenues that we could go down. Just like you said, that this is a very vast subject, and it's hard to wrap your mind around sometimes, But anyways, L.A., I appreciate it. You have a good evening. And until next time, keep truthing and have a good one.